Waiting. Okay, and we are live. What's up, y'all? It's Ruthina, and this is Liberated Conversations with Ruthina. So, as you can see, I have my guest with me, the person that we're going to be talking to, but I want to kind of give you a little information. So let me just read a little something for you. This past Sunday, actually a few Sundays from a few years ago, this is from a blog that I wrote on my website, ruthinaporterfield.com. And it reads, this past Sunday, a friend and fellow aspiring actress came over to work on a project. As usual, we ended up talking for hours about everything except the project. A major topic of conversation was our desire to be great. We spoke candidly about our career goals and aspirations. Today, I realized that was the first time in my life where I was able to share how big my dreams really are. I was able to do this because I was speaking with someone who shared the grand nature of my own dreams, but saw it as possible. Her exact words were, "And why not?" I'm going to be talking to that person today. So come on and join the conversation. So this liberated conversation is with a friend that I have been friends with. I'm going to say I don't know if it's been 5 years yet, but she'll clue me in. Her name is Kim Aquarelli. I always try to pronounce it right, but Kim! Thank you.
That's perfect.
It was for real? Oh, good.
You're great. No, of course. Oh my gosh.
So cool. Has it been 5 years? Yeah.
I'm going to say longer than that because I think I've been at Studio C now over 6 years. So it's got to be at least 6 because that's how we met, is you brought me to that studio.
That's so crazy, which we're going to get into. Okay, so we've been friends for a minute now.
Yeah,
okay.
We've been friends for a while.
Yeah, this isn't a fresh friendship.
No.
Okay, so the reason that I have you on is because if anyone, like many of you who are probably watching now, probably saw the last conversation I had with Jameson Bourgeois, which is so cool how both of you have these very, very European ethnic, true, authentically, Europe names. Jameson Bourgeois, who lives in France, his background was French and Irish, so crazy. But he was a friend from elementary school and middle school. And I wanted to talk to a friend that I've been friends with today. And so Kim and I have been friends for 6 years. How you said we met through Studio C. I actually love the way that we met. So I'm gonna let you tell the story.
Got it. Wait, so we're live on Facebook, is it?
We're live on Facebook and YouTube right now.
On YouTube, Facebook and YouTube. Got it. Okay. So we actually, you and I both ended up going to the same casting director workshop. And we didn't know each other at the time, but I was in the audience when I watched you do your scene, and I loved what you had done with your scene. And I had just left probably a month prior my former acting studio. And so I thought, she's good. I mean, you're so talented. Where does she study? I should just find out where she studies, because if she's, putting up work like that, I should definitely be going to a place like that. So the casting workshop ended, and I happened to be walking out to the parking lot around the same time, right behind you, and just approached you and said, "Excuse me, your scene was really good. Can I just find out where you study?"
Which is so cool, because one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight how we met is because in this crazy time when we're talking about race and racial relations and how we see each other initially, I think it's important to highlight the fact that it wasn't race necessarily that brought us together. What brought us together was something we had in common. Would you agree? Like a common interest in acting.
Yeah.
And a common interest. And I think yeah. And I think what has kept our friendship, I think probably the base of our friendship is definitely that our dream, the common goal. Does that make sense? Am I wording that right?
Yeah. Our goal to make it in this industry and to make really good art, transcendent art in this industry.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was looking back at just some old you're gonna hate this, at some of our old the showcases. You know, the showcases.
No, yeah, our videos.
Yes.
We don't talk about those.
We don't talk about our old showcases and what we did.
Don't you beat us, Ruthina. We're not allowed to say our ages on this. We're actresses.
Yes. Yes. So we're ageless is what we are.
Perpetually 26.
Yes. I love it. I love it. You know what? Funny. One of the cool things about our friendship, like I said in the blog post that I read, was how we would get together and talk about everything except the project that we were working on. Something that probably could have been done in a couple of months took a couple years to finally get together.
Oh man.
But I think that's where our friendship kind of blossomed more so than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons it led me to, I think I've said it to you, Black folks know this all the time. There's only a few people that are invited to the cookout. Have I said that to you?
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that you are, and I have a gamut of friends here or associates or whatever that are white, Caucasian, whatever you want to say. But this young lady, whoever's going to be watching this from Charleston, this is the person that you will probably see at the cookout when I come home. Like,
I want to go to the cookout so bad. Just coming to your apartment with the meals that you would make me, oh my gosh. And you would say, oh no, it's so simple. This is easy. I'm like, this is great. I'm scarfing it down. This is amazing. I would be honored to go to the cookout.
Yes, she's gonna be when I come home. This is the white person and she will fit right in. Trust me. One of the reasons that you fit in, Kim, and one of the reasons I can say that authentically about you is because you are so authentic. I never have to either censor myself with you. I never have to code switch with you, and I don't think that it's a purpose. I do it purposefully with certain friends. I think it's just a thing of in any friendship, you will see this where subconsciously you find yourself being only a part of yourself with a certain group of friends. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you compartmentalize who you are depending on the group that you're around. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And I feel like you are in a category with several where it's not like that. Because I think you see me on every end of the spectrum. Like
same. I could say the same about you to me. Ditto. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we've shared experiences. I said this in my last conversation. We have shared experiences with each other. And one of the experiences is where we're going to start right from the beginning is we shared our childhoods. We shared where we grew up. We shared how we grew up. We shared our craziness in our families. We shared a lot. And so what is so fascinating that I think people will find is about your dad and him being an LAPD officer, detective. Kind of tell a little bit about that.
Well, you are hired on, I would like to say that I probably should know more specifics, but I don't. But you're hired, everybody kind of starts as an officer. You know, you go on the streets and you're patrol officer and things. That's generally where you start, because that's supposed to be the basics and the foundation of police work. And just like any organization, you move up and they have different departments and things like that. So he's jumped a lot of times through departments. I believe he did do detective for a while. I know he did special victims. I know that he was undercover. I know he did traffic, things like that. So he kind of jumped departments throughout his career, and he's retired now. He's been retired for, I think, probably as long as you and I have known each other. Have we ever talked about that? When I met you, I think he was already retired.
I remember you saying he was going into retirement. You never said specifically like the retirement process. I remember you just talking about him kind of going into retirement. He was close to being done type conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's been retired now for about 6 years or so.
Now, hold up, because you never told me he did SVU.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's deep.
That was the hardest thing on him, as he told me. That's the things that really, really got to him were those cases, because he looked at it like those were the real problems. Those were the real monsters. And I, you know, I remember I was talking to my friend, and she currently lives in Houston now, but she and I work together here, and she's Black. And she's been another one of my Black friends that I've been having conversations like this with. And she said that she remembered one time when we were working together, and we went out to eat, and we were talking about my dad being a police officer, and how when we were talking about how he always would say things like, who cares? This guy's Black. He's driving over the speed limit. Who cares? Who cares? There's bigger problems. There's bigger issues. I'd rather go out and actually fight the real crime and do what really matters and focus on things that really matter. And he found that there was a lot of that going on. There is a lot of racism in police departments. And the first person that will tell you that is a retired police officer, is that there is a culture created where it is okay a lot of the times for that racism to come out.
Really?
It wore on my father so much. A lot of things, that and the SVU cases, you know, dealing with children who have been molested or things like that are just, they're rough and they get to you. But yeah, he's been very honest. This has been, talking to him with all of this that's been happening, it's been rough. You know, it's been rough on him.
I'm really curious because it's so funny. Your dad was in LA specifically during, and I just don't want to talk about like the Rodney King thing, right? We're talking OJ. We're talking when LA like show enough flared up. So you're talking OJ. You're talking Rodney King. You're talking Watts riots. Was he working during? Because that was in the 60s, though.
He wasn't working during the Watts riot. Yeah, he wasn't working. He was younger at that time, but he was very aware of it and the way that everybody out here was.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then I can't remember if I don't think riots happened when the young lady was shot by the Korean owner. There was a LA story where a young lady walked into a store, Black teenage girl, goes into a Korean regular, one of those side stores type things. The Korean lady, I guess she thinks she's stealing, and they start arguing, and the lady shoots her and kills her. And the lady who shoots and kills her gets off with community service. And there was a whole uproar in LA about that. That happened right before Rodney King happened. But I don't know I can't remember if there were riots. So you said that your dad talked about the racism that was kind of perpetuated. It was just a part of the system, is what he was saying?
Well, It's so complex in regards to those things, because obviously there's people who are racist and people who are not. There's going to be racism in in any profession. Unfortunately, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But what I remember specifically talking to him, and especially recently on these things, of the issue that a lot of people have been bringing up is, well, why don't good officers speak up? And where does this continue to happen, that the racism and these really bad officers continue to flourish in the system? Why does that keep happening? And, he said he remembers that there were times when he would speak out about it, and you're going against your fellow officer because there's such a community within police that the racist cops, the bad cops, the cops who had each other's backs, who were in whose ever pocket, the corruption would all band together and they would back each other up and would not back up any police officer that came against them. And there were times where my dad knew that going in on a shift that night, if God forbid, all hell broke loose, there would be a good possibility that he would die that night, because the officers who would be on call to back him up would not come to back him up, because they knew how outspoken he was. They knew how he was against the racism and against the politics and against the BS. I don't want to say bad words or anything, but against the corruption that was going on. But because he was known as that in the department, there would be times where he would need backup, and he knew damn well they weren't going to come back him up. And so there comes a time, I think, that's unfortunate with some police officers, where they want to speak up, but they know that that's the situation that could happen to them. And at the end of the day, they want to go home to their families too. So they're thinking, is it worth my life to speak up? And I'm not, justifying any of that behavior, like, not justifying it, but that's the thought that runs through a lot of these cops' minds of, like, I want to go home and see my kids. And I know that if I speak up against all of this corruption, there's a possibility it could cost me my life. So I see a lot of them retire early. I see, my dad, even in regards to other police officers, retired earlier than some. I've seen how it's worn down on him. I saw throughout the years how fighting, it was almost harder to fight the department and the corruption in the department than it was on the streets. He was in gang units, he was confronting with all of those things. And I learned in talking to him about that. He said, the people, gang members that all of these cops are looking at, and they're bad people, and they're just a gang member. They're just a gang member. He said, no, they're doing what they know. They're surviving in an environment that they know. This is how they live. This is how they survive. You are the police officer. You volunteered to protect and serve. You volunteered to put yourself above the moral standard. You're supposed to uphold the law. You're supposed to be held to a higher standard.
Right.
But they don't. And I don't want to say all of them, because obviously, my dad is not the only officer in my life. I grew up around a lot of them. And there are a lot of really good police officers. There are a lot of really good people who want to make a difference. But unfortunately, because there is a lot of corruption, the environment isn't always good for them to flourish in.
I'm already getting comments and questions.
Sure. Yeah.
You partly answered one of the questions. Here was the questions. It was, what did your father feel? I think she might have, what did your father feel that he had the power to do to positively influence his department? Did he feel like he had any influence at all? I think you kind of touched on it.
That's in the specifics of it, I would have to probably talk more in depth with him. I know that he's done a lot where he feels that the quantified immunity is that all we're talking about, that has to go. That just allows for police to have the backs of those that really should not be in that position.
And then, I'm sorry to cut you off, explain the quantified immunity concept?
So the idea is, I don't want to misquote it, but basically it's a system put in place to protect police officers in where oh gosh, I don't even know the exact word to describe it, but it almost covers them in case there is an issue of police brutality, it's almost like a union, like a big union to protect each other.
Like an unspoken union?
No, it's a law. It's a law put in.
Okay.
That's what they're trying to get rid of, is all of the quantified immunities. That was trying to say it right. Let me actually look at the right phrasing.
Yeah, while you're looking at that, I'm going to read some comments that have come in.
Yeah, it's government officials from being held personally liable for constitutional violations.
Got it.
So it does give an out to some extent for excessive police violence. That's basically what it does. Gosh, I couldn't get the words out. Thanks everybody for your
No, it's fine. It's funny. One of the comments that came in was actually from a teacher, and she says she gets it. It's the same kind of concept even in the education system, which is so funny because your mom
mom's an elementary school teacher. And she said the same thing. Obviously, it doesn't involve the brutality and the violence in the way that a police force does, because they're but yeah, it's the same thing. You have teachers that get tenure and they can't be fired, and when they maybe need to, and it takes years to reform things in education. So I feel for her. My mom has said the same thing. I think that's where my mom and dad have been so similar in discussions of change. They're fighting a losing battle against these systems that just don't want to change.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, one of the comments actually said, and you guys, please feel free. I'm trying to get to all the comments as quickly as possible. Feel free to send them in. Kim, I told you I wasn't prepared for people to do all this.
No, that's okay. I'm not either. Like, I don't know what's going on. This is my first live Facebook, whatever we're on. Like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I have someone who said they have associates that told me why they didn't speak up, and just kind of agreeing with you, saying that, what you're saying is true for the most part. Like, it's true. And it trips me out that it's true not only with the police, but in our education system as well, which explains, when you think about some of the stories that we've seen, how, especially some of the statistics as well, the numbers for the amount of suspensions and expulsions for Black students versus white students, the amount of times the police is called. In fact, I would love, it's my friend Noelle, she's a teacher, she's on here. You can chime in on a comment with that as well, where the number of times that the police are called specifically to handle situations with Black students is like ridiculous compared to what it is. Go ahead, I'll let you say something.
Yeah.
You were about to say something.
No, I'm absolutely. It's the proportions between it is huge. Staggering.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I have cousins that were police officers, but they were police officers in the South. It's so different, of course, when you have police officers in LA. The West Coast versus the South is such a different dynamic, which kind of leads me to our childhoods. Growing up, I think I particularly in the last conversation, I talked about how I started off my childhood in a predominantly Black school, transferred to a predominantly white school, and then back to a predominantly Black school. And that kind of decided my friendships. You, however, lived in LA. Now, did you grow up in LAUSD, which is Los Angeles Unified School District?
No,
Ventura County, which is predominantly.
It's the majority of, I believe the county now is, I'm not sure if the county is still white or if it's Latinx. I always say that wrong. So I apologize. But the school I went to was more diverse, definitely, I would say, than where you grew up, it was predominantly white or Latinx culture.
Okay.
And kids.
Which is very evident of just the Los Angeles County area, Ventura County area. Just this is where a lot of Latinx dwell. This is their spot.
And the majority of my students are as well, where she teaches.
That makes sense. So tell me, and just I'm gonna go straight there. Tell me about your interracial friendships as a kid. What did that look like?
Well, so my very first friend actually in the neighborhood was a little Black girl named Nikki. She lived around the corner, and I remember it was kind of like the neighborhood kids and all of those things. And so Nikki was one of the girls in the neighborhood that my sister and I used to play with. And then there was Nicholas across the street, who was a friend of my brother's, who was half white, half Filipino, I believe. And down the street was my brother's other friend, Nitin, who his family was from India. So that was kind of all of the group and then it was us, the Acrelli white kids, and we all played with each other. That's what the experience was, were these kids just in the block playing with each other. And I have to give so much credit to my parents, because I really believe that racism is taught. I believe that when you look at kids and the way just a little innocent child interacts with another child, it's innocent. They'll play with anybody. My parents, I never, ever, ever heard anything come out of their mouth. Never, ever had, and it never even occurred to me that she was Black until I got older and realized what it all was. It was just, hey, Nikki's going to come over and we can play with Nikki, and we're going to stay at Nikki's house, and Nikki's going to come to our house. And I never, ever heard anything. I didn't realize it's that ignorant bubble, I guess, of not even realizing that she was Black. It was just, oh, this is my friend Nikki.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because you said you went to her house, she came to your house. Were there sleepovers?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is huge, because if you watch my last conversation, I was talking with my friend Jameson. I told you the stories about how that just did not happen. And I think it's important to note that there is an age difference between Kim and I.
We're both
and so, but we're both still in our 20s. So,
we don't date ourselves. We're actresses.
So we represent different times, different perspectives of different times. Not only which is so cool about our friendship, because there's a racial difference, there's a geographic difference, there's a generational difference, there's a couple of political differences as well. And these aren't very small differences. No. There are major differences. We disagree on major things like abortion and gay marriage. We disagree, and it's so important to note that we are still not just friends, not just associates. We are friends. Like, this is one of my closest friends on the planet. So I think that's important to note. But yeah, with the sleepover thing, that just did not happen with me. And it didn't happen, it wasn't something unspoken or unheard. It was very clear. Yes, you can come to my house for my birthday party, but I can't come to yours. Yes, you can come to my house to do homework, but I can't come to yours. And I'll come to your birthday party as long as it's not in your house, in your neighborhood. My God, I could have had a birthday party at a park and they wouldn't have come. So I want to talk about sleepovers. There was never a question in your family, like, when it came up?
Not that I remember. And, in talking to my parents about it, and they said, we had her over and you went over and it was totally fine, because I have her on, I believe, on Facebook and both Instagram, and I've just kind of kept up with her through the years as she's had kids and things like that. And I told her, I said, yeah, my parents were just talking about you. And she messaged me back. She said, oh my gosh, I think about them all the time. When I drive by there, I should swing in and stop by and, visit them when this is all over and it's safe. And I said, yeah, go. Not even a question, not even a question. And I remember she lived in the cul-de-sac just north of us. And my mom would walk us over. And then whenever the sleepover or the playtime, whatever we were doing for the day, she'd come and pick us up. Same thing, her mom or her dad would come over and pick us up and pick her up and walk her back to the house. And, never Nitin would come over, Nicholas would come over, and they would do, I don't know if my brother had sleepovers. I don't know if that's what boys do at that age. I don't know if it's called sleepover.
Right.
But they would come over all the time, and I remember just the parents would come and walk them over and walk back, and that's what it was.
So how long these are friends that you've had pretty much your whole life, correct?
Well, we've all kind of split up and gone our different ways. So like I keep in touch with Nikki on Facebook and things like that and social media, but we're not as close. Just, you grow up and move on with life and things like that. Right. But I would love to see her and catch up with her.
Well, my question is, living in LA during those times, during very tumultuous times, very controversial times, how did those, if at all, affect those friendships?
That's actually a really good question. I don't remember it really having much of an effect on the friendships, but it might have just been because I was younger at the time. And, Rodney King, I remember it happening, and I remember the riots, and I remember my dad not coming home for days on end because of the riots. But I think because I was still so young when it was happening that I didn't fully process what was actually happening and what had happened in regards to white police officers and a black male. I don't think I really processed it because I was young. And I wonder, though, a lot about how if, let's say, I had been in high school and I was older and really understood and processed what was happening, if it would have affected those friendships or not. I hope that it wouldn't, because, yeah.
No, I was going to say, that's a very important distinction, leading without dating ourselves, leading to our age difference.
Right.
Because I was in high school when it happened. Mm-hmm. Not only was I in high school when it happened, but I was at a predominantly Black school. And we had a few white students for sure, but we had a large Filipino. Oh gosh, here we go. I have more comments. They come in at a crazy. Okay, I'm going to read the comment to you. There is a fine line here because we definitely need cops and all types of law enforcement. It's hard to point fingers knowing how desperately we need them. We don't want law enforcement to feel disrespected when they put their entire lives on the line every day. We need to speak to a larger system. Oh, that's a good point. We need to speak to a larger system here. She said, there is a fear of the Black community. People don't realize that it's almost impossible to build a relationship with someone they fear. That's awesome.
That's incredible.
That's huge. That's huge. Mm-hmm. Ones that are fear developed called callous. Oh gosh, there's more. I want to touch on that point. People don't realize that it's almost impossible to build a relationship with someone they fear.
Absolutely.
When you talk about from base, our friendship, when you talk about from base, childhood interracial friendships, I'm so glad you said you give props to your mom, because anytime, and the fact that I didn't have that type of interaction with other white students as a child, it testifies to the absence of fear. I'm hoping to the absence of fear that your parents had for other races, even though your dad worked for LAPD. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, and because that point is so valid across the board. how can you expect the Black community to build a relationship with police officers when they're afraid of dying every time they're confronted with them? You can look at it at that end as well. How can you expect that? So the conversations I remember having with my dad, not even just recently, but wait, what was the question again? Rephrase it for me so I make sure I answer it properly.
Oh, yeah. So it's impossible to build a relationship with someone they fear. Your parents, would you say that your parents had an absence of fear when it came to other races, despite your father working for the LAPD?
I would say, yeah, absolutely. Because my parents always raised me to look at, it's a human being. You're a person. And, I was raised Catholic, and the belief that we all come from the same God. We're all human. So I never was taught to fear a specific race or to fear somebody because of the color of their skin. My parents raised me to be smart and have your wits about you, because there are bad people in this world. There are absolutely bad people in this world, but it doesn't come down to race. It doesn't come down to gender. It doesn't come down to sexual orientation. It doesn't come down to that. There's people, there's good and bad people. And
right.
My dad, he would always say, he said, no, you don't racially profile, you behaviorally profile. Is someone behaving in a manner that he instilled that all the time in me. It's, you don't racially profile, you behaviorally profile. Like, how is this person responding and acting? And that's what it is. It's not about race. He said there's good and bad people. He saw what would be considered as the quote unquote stand up, what we have in our mind, stereotypical person. They do the worst crimes. It's statistically, pedophiles are generally older white males.
Thank you.
So you're going to sit here and label the Black community as the violent ones. You're going to label the Black community as the people that commit the crimes. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I go back to a story that my dad told me, because my dad's father, my grandfather, was a doctor. And so I remember he was telling me a story about how my father was probably 8 or 9, had to drop something off at the hospital to my grandfather for my grandma. She didn't drive. And he went to the hospital, and I remember he was looking for his dad, trying to give him whatever it was. And there was a Black patient there. And my dad got to talking to them. My dad's talkative now, he's just been talkative his whole life. And he was talking to the patient. And the patient said, "Oh, you're Dr. Accarelli's son. We love your father." And my dad's, you're a kid. You love hearing those things about your parents. You're at that age where your parents are your everything. So yeah, tell me more about my dad, how much you love him. And he said, "Your dad treats us all with respect. He treats us fairly. He treats us like we're human beings." And my dad stopped and thought, well, yeah, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? And the patient said to him, he said, you don't understand now, you're too young, but you're going to understand at some point. And that stuck with my dad, because he grew up and he said, yeah, I did understand, because that man was Black and probably went to a lot of doctors and hospitals where he was not treated with any kind of respect because he was Black. My dad said, I just didn't get it then, because that's not how he was raised. That's not how he was raised. My grandfather, when you cut into people, we all bleed the same color. We all bleed the same blood. That was the idea, not even just on my dad's side. I know we're talking primarily with my dad because he was, but on my mom's side too. And I hear about things.
Talk about your mom.
Well, I hear about people will talk about, that when they were growing up, they heard their grandparents say these things and kind of scoff it off like, oh, it's a different generation. It was a different generation. I never heard that from my grandparents either. I never heard disparaging remarks, discriminatory remarks about anybody from my grandparents, ever. I just never heard those things. And my mom, she's been fighting, she's going back to your teacher friend that's been commenting. She has been fighting a lot to try and change the curriculum and get different books in, because there's a lot of books, little kid books, that have white kids on the cover. She's like, but I don't teach a lot of white kids. How am I supposed to reach
nice.
children, and how am I supposed to? They need to see themselves represented. They need to see their family represented, their environments represented. You know, she doesn't make them stand for the Pledge of Allegiance when in the classroom, because she says, how can I make a child stand up and pledge to a flag and a pledge that does not mean the same thing to me as it does to them, especially in our current environment with our current administration and our current president, who has said disparaging. Oh gosh, don't even. That's a whole.
That's like another 30 minutes now.
I will go off about how much I cannot stand that man, but she says he's done nothing but said discriminatory, disgusting remarks about who these children are, where they come from, the language they speak, how hard their families work, their family coming to this country. She said, how can I make them stand up and pledge to that flag? So that's, you know, yeah, and that's how my parents raised me. That's how my parents raised me.
This is a great, you mentioned something that gives me a little piece of a segue, because my next conversation is going to be which is going to be the official launch and premiere next month. My next conversation is actually going to be with a young lady by the name of Carla Stevens, who has an organization called Representation Matters Foundation. I'm actually going to put their website up on screen, because that foundation specifically is working to ensure that Black children and underprivileged children see books where they are represented. And her nonprofit organization specifically tries her best to get into schools, and she hands out these books for free to kids so that they can see themselves. And it's so interesting that your mom is fighting what is that fight? What does it take to do that?
It's damn near impossible. It's damn near impossible. It's similar. It's unfortunate how much it correlates to law enforcement. It's damn near impossible, because you have so many institutions set up and so many laws set up and so many unions that you're fighting against, that it's hard. It's really hard, because it's almost technically a curriculum change to some extent. And it needs to be. Wow. You know, you do need to change the curriculum, because you are learning a whitewashed version of history. So you do need to change the curriculum. You know, I was thinking about, they were talking about Mount Rushmore, and how I learned about how it was this awesome place in America and cool. Let's look at the rocks. And no, it was sacred to Native Americans. It was this sacred rock that they used, this mountainside that was sacred to them. And a white supremacist KKK member is the one who made it. I didn't.
What, girl? You're gonna make me do some history. I had no idea about that one. You're gonna make me do a history check on that.
He was a KKK member, and who has desecrated a sacred mountainside. That was a sacred mountainside. You don't learn that. I didn't learn that till later in life either. And I think, holy hell, how long did it take? And I mean later in life, like college. I don't mean like you're sugarcoating things for a 5-year-old. I didn't learn about that till college. How? Because it's whitewashed. So you're fighting. It's this fight, which I don't need to tell a Black female what a fight is. Let's be honest.
Right.
This uphill climb that teachers are facing, that cops are facing, that they know it needs to change. And God, is it just so slow to change? It's ridiculous. Slow to change.
It's ridiculous. I'm gonna pivot because time has gone by so fast. We literally have been on. Time has gone by super fast.
Does it cut you off?
Huh?
Does it cut you off?
No, it hasn't cut me off. It doesn't cut you off. But I don't want to hold everybody forever, right?
No, well, we're on quarantine. What the hell else am I doing?
I know, right? So what else are you gonna do? Pause and then come back later. How about that, right?
Good conversation, and it's interesting to hear people's viewpoints and the questions that you got to be getting. And yeah, not at all.
Oh my gosh, that comment is so good. Someone said we learned the half-truth/lie about history.
Mm-hmm.
And then my teacher friend says that you with as far as establishing curriculum, you have to be intentional and unrelenting about it. Oh, we got a thank you, Kim, from someone. They like you. Clearly.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, humanize us. That's a comment.
I'm grateful
no, but I
to have people like you in my life who are willing to have these discussions and are willing to call me out on things if I do need to. You know, if I am not understanding something, or if I do say something, you know, I need people like you to call me out and have these discussions with me, because that's the only way that I'm going to grow as a person. That's the only way we're going to grow as a society, is if we really start understanding these things.
Well, you know what? I want to talk about that because we recently had we're going to have to do another discussion. I just gotta Kim, do her more often. So we might have to do another one.
That's fine.
If you're up for it. LA is about to go back to stay at home, so more than likely. So we'll have the time. Trust. I will bring her back because So, but no, I actually wanted to talk to you about those uncomfortable conversations because we recently had one. And I know that for some white people, it is a difficult conversation to have. But I think everything that we've talked about up until this point contributes to your ability to have that conversation, right? The fact that you have this background where you were taught that we are all the same, we all believe the same. You had Black friends as a little girl where you, just like Jameson from my last conversation, you were engulfed and surrounded in the culture. It wasn't just your Black friend at school that you played with every now and then. You went into their homes and spent the night in their homes. I love the story. I love the story where you were at your friend's and they wanted to put you in the back bedroom or something like that so you wouldn't get shot.
Oh yeah, that was later. That was much later in my life. That wasn't when I was a kid, but yeah, when she was such a sweet lady. His grandmother wanted to put me in the back bedroom because in case there was a drive-by, we were in a South Central, and that was the reality of the situation. And what struck me so much about it is it was so casual in the way that she said it, that this is so common in the environment that she's in and the environment that they live in, that it's so common that it was so casual to say, I'm going to keep you in the back just in case there's a drive-by. It was almost like, hey, come in for a drink. And that reality is a big reality.
Sobering. It's sobering. It's one of those things where it's like the things that I live with on a daily basis for you it blows your mind. It always trips me out. I have a friend who said to your story, it said, what? I would have asked to leave.
I didn't. It was a friend. It was a guy that I was seeing at the time. It was his friend. And it was a difficult time in my life to not get into a lot of details about it. I was younger and it was a difficult time. And I honestly needed a place to stay. And she was very welcoming and allowed us to stay there for a little bit. And it was definitely sobering. But no, I didn't ask to leave. I didn't even really think about it. I just was like,
oh my gosh.
Okay.
So another comment.
In the back.
I would not have fit in the tub. Like I would. In other words, I would have used that as an excuse. I wouldn't have fit in the tub. Oh my gosh. Oh, and here's the other comment. Another comment. They must love this story. I told you this story is so funny. So I guess she understands. She goes, oh, it was a boo. It was a boo, as in it was a bae, it was a boo. Okay. It was a boo. So it was a boo. That's going to be another discussion, definitely, because we have to talk about interracial relationships.
Well, okay, so he actually, the guy I was with was white at the time. Like, and I have dated black men, but that situation was at the time my boyfriend was white, but his really good friend, was black. And so we were staying with him and his grandmother. Yeah. So just to clarify in that situation. Yeah.
Okay. So the boo wasn't black, you guys. The boo wasn't black.
Not but I have dated, which we can do another whatever on that as well, interracial relationships and things like that. Absolutely.
That'll be a different discussion for sure, girlfriend. That'll be a good one. No, but I definitely want to talk just really quickly about the uncomfortable conversation we had where we talked about and I'll just kind of quickly say the situation where as we stated, Kim and I both are actresses. And during this time, we do a ridiculous amount of auditions. A lot of them are self-tapes, which means that we have to audition in our home, record it, and send it off. One of the things that people are unaware of, and which is ridiculous, that are actually unaware of in the entertainment industry, is the lighting that is necessary for a Black person versus a white person, which should be kind of obvious considering our skin tones. I mean, you are looking at a straight up Black African from Charleston, South Carolina. You know what I mean? You are looking at a straight Italian. This is Kim. You can tell your background because she's not like 50% this or something. She is straight Italian, correct?
No, actually, more my dad than I am. He's Italian. In looking in the idea of what I think people sometimes stereotype as Italian, because if you go to northern Italy, they're very, very fair and blonde. So that idea of Italian, but I think what people, especially more of what's portrayed in the movies, of a little bit darker skin tone, darker hair. My dad looks more like that. And then my mom's side is predominantly Irish. So she has much more fair skin, which is where I have more fair skin like she does. And my dad, has darker, more Italian skin.
Okay. Yeah. So she's very white. That's the point. Because you can't get whiter than Irish. Okay.
Long story short, I'm white.
She's white. So she invited me over to self-tape at a mutual friend's house, talking about
well. He's Irish as well. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, Daniel is he's white as well. She really, really kind of pushed how great the lighting was. It was this great place to self-tape. It was going to look great on camera. And I got there and immediately I knew that this was not going to be what I needed to do a good job. And I want to say this because I think there are others in my position where you get in a place where it was a racial thing. And this is a good friend. It is a racial thing. And while Kim and I have discussed race on various occasions, you get into a situation like this, and it's clearly a racial ignorance. And I hope I say that, it's just straight up, it's a racial ignorance type of thing. And it's like, what do you say? And I remember I did the self-tape. I did it knowing that it wasn't going to be good. And all I kept thinking was, well, I'm grateful that I'm here. And, I'm thankful because he had better camera equipment than I did. And I just thought to myself, just do it, be grateful, and leave. And then we had to talk about it. And it was just like, you didn't know. You just honestly didn't know. But I appreciated that you accepted that you didn't know and you owned up to it. You are not aware of lighting issues at all, correct?
Or
you didn't think about it?
I didn't even think about it. It didn't even cross my mind, and which it should have. That's the thing, that it should have, because just because you and I have a really good friendship and we're close doesn't change the fact that you are Black and I'm white. It doesn't change just because we're friends. And I need
Right.
to be aware of that fact. And I think it was you that pointed it out, like, hey, you should come and do a test run first. And if you don't like it, no problem. Because in regards to actual knowledge of movie lighting, I'm bad with that anyway. I don't even know how to light myself. You know what I mean? So that's where I should have said, come and check the lighting first and see if you're comfortable with it and if it does work for you. And no, I just thought, oh, it works for me. It should work and that's the white mentality. That's the white privilege mentality. Oh, it works for me. It should work for everybody. And
Beautiful way to put that.
what your statement was coming back to also white privilege and almost to a certain extent of white supremacy, where you said, I was just grateful to be there. That's what a lot of white supremacy was to Blacks. You should just be grateful you're here. You should just be grateful you have any of this. No, that's bull.
It's BS.
Bull. Yeah, it's bull because no, you shouldn't. This is your self-tape. This is your career. And obviously we're talking now about self-tapes, not slavery, but this is your career. You should absolutely not feel grateful that you're there. This is your career. It should have been better lighting. I should have been a better friend. And I should have been more aware of it. Absolutely. That was 100% my fault. And you have no right to, or not right, but no, you shouldn't feel like you should have to feel grateful to be in a situation that's not beneficial to you. Just because, that was me and Dan, 100% our fault. It was absolutely 100% our fault.
And it's one of those things where, and here's the battle. And our situation is very small compared to what a lot of Black people go through, what I have been through in other situations, by the way. But I just wanted to use that as an example because so many of us just feel grateful. And a lot of that too comes from the whole being raised in the South thing, the deep South. Some of that kind of contributes to it because I remember being told that when I went to Youth Academy, which was the magnet school, just be happy you're there. That's a school for really smart kids. They let some Black people in. You just need to be happy that you're there. That was told to me constantly when I was younger. Constantly. Make sure you represent well. Don't make a ruckus. Don't act crazy because we're Black people in that place. You have to be a certain way. It's this thing of we are always representing everybody, like no matter where we go. I think about that every time I walk into, my God, even at Studio C, how many times was I the only Black person in the room?
And then when there was one more Black student, every white person jumped on it and said, hey, you should date this Black guy.
How many? Oh my gosh, it was crazy. It was crazy. The one other time one Black guy, it's like all of a sudden, yep, that's the guy for you. It's like, wait, what? Oh, you get a little support here. There is no way. Can you see these comments?
No, I can't see anything. I mean, unless, wait, maybe because I'm on private chat. I'm also very technologically really just bad. It's very, wait, let me see. Oh, wait, yes, I can. Live. Okay. The last one was, is it Noelle?
Yeah. Where she says, there is no way you would know about what I needed. So
I still feel bad. Because you know what else that made me think of after that conversation about that is I started thinking about when we first met. And I know I had talked to you about that, where when I approached you, really, truthfully, my only thought was, let me approach this actress who I thought was talented, see where she goes because I need a new acting studio. That was my thought process. That in itself was a white privilege because I'm sure you've had white females approach you that didn't end in a friendship. It didn't end in a friendship. It didn't end in a happy way, a white female approaching you.
Right.
And that in itself is a privilege that I didn't have to sit there and even think about race when it came to that. Whereas you probably turned around and was like, why is this white person talking to me?
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things that we talked about before, where it kind of threw me initially when you approached me, because it's like, what's going on here? So
Yeah.
you go through that a little bit. So it is a
That's
little
how
different.
that's what you know in society. It's nothing wrong, it's nothing bad. It's just that you probably had experiences with white females that didn't end positive. So it's
Yeah.
from a place of experience, and that there's nothing wrong with that. That in itself
Yeah.
for me was a privilege, that I didn't have to think about that when I approached you. I just thought
Which
about talking to a talented actress.
and that's what's going on right now. So many white people are realizing some of the things that they just did not think about. They just didn't think about. And it's not necessarily about feeling bad about being white. That's not what we're asking. We're not asking you to feel bad for being white. We're
No.
not asking for you to feel bad because there are certain things that you don't have to deal with that I have to deal with. We're asking you to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. And
That's
listen.
all.
And just
And let's
and listen and work on what to change. And I see now the comment of white privilege for most of us is not paying attention to someone left. And that's the unfortunately what it is it's ignorance. It's total ignorance to things like that. Things like I remember it had happened kind of right after you and I had a conversation about you and your hair, and when you can and cannot meet because of your hair and what you do. And okay, not a problem. But I remember a girl at my work, we were talking about hair dye and things like that. And then she made like an offhand comment to one of my Black coworkers about the shampoo that she uses. And in my head, I just look over, I'm like, that shampoo is not going to work for her hair at all. You have very, very thin white female hair, and she's Black, and it's a whole different ball game. So even things like that, and my coworker's so nice because it's something that Black women face all the time. And she said, "Oh, I don't really like that brand, but thank you for the invite." She was so nice about it, and the girl walked
like
away.
discussing it. It's just like, oh.
And I thought in my head, I'm like, you handled that beautifully, because she knew that I knew what I was. When I turned and looked at her, she knew what I was thinking. And she said, "You were thinking about the fact that her hair is white." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I would never suggest any kind of shampoo to you because it's different." But she said, "This is what we deal with." She said, "This is just
Every day.
every
Day. Remember, I told you about the situation where I had with a client that I had with my childcare business, who really wanted to argue me down about how our hair was the same because hers is curly. What the freak? Are you out of your mind? Like what? And you get to a point where you just don't want to argue it down anymore. You just don't. You're just like, you know what? Okay. And that's basically what I did. It's just like, it's the same as when I came to the house. It's just like, you know what? Okay. Because it's the exhaustion. It's the exhaustion of being Black. That's what it is.
that white people don't have. White people have that privilege.
Yeah. And it's so funny. That's full circle why you're invited to the cookout. I remember that that day I had to call you and say, listen, we can't meet because Ish hair washed it. I have to wash my hair. And I remember the next day that you came over and you were like, trust me, Ruthina, it's okay. If one of my white friends told me they had to wash their hair, it'd be different. But with you, I understand it's a situation.
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game, and that's just what it is. And there's nothing. That's life. We're different. You and I, are a Black female. I'm not. We're different. You can't walk around pretending like you don't see color. That's stupid. But it's acknowledging our cultural differences, acknowledging, that we still do have a friendship, and I love you, and yeah, I should wash your hair. Like, who cares? Why do people got to argue about that stupid, like, what kind of white power kind of trip is that? Like, shut up. It's part of what we were talking about. I think I was telling you about some of the things I was seeing on Instagram, because I don't post that often anyway. Even as an actress, I never post. I think I posted maybe once in the past 8 months. I hate it. But I was looking at my scroll, I guess what they call it, scroll line or whatever, on Instagram.
Like a feed or something.
Yeah. And I was looking at how the white people were protesting that they needed a haircut. A haircut.
Oh,
They didn't want to wear masks, and they needed a haircut, and they wanted things to open. And I'm sitting here, and meanwhile, the Black community is protesting Mr. George Floyd and the tragedy that happened to him. And I'm sitting here going, if this does not show the disparity between the races, if this does not show racism, white privilege, everything we're discussing, if people cannot see this, I don't know how to get through to you. I don't know how to get through. You're protesting to get a damn, I'm finding it real hard not to say those words, but you're protesting a haircut. A man was just murdered in the street of what people are considering a modern day lynching, and you're worried about a haircut?
Girl. What?
I know. And then there were even, and I know people white people want to do things to help and want to be, I guess, what they're calling allies. Correct me if I'm using wrong verbiage as well, but there were some of my white friends who were like protesting and look at me at the protest and we're winning. And I'm like, we're winning.
I gotta come off
nothing but quiet and complacent for 400 years. Let's just be honest. Do you really want me to sit here and take a beautiful picture of me at the it felt so white savior to me on some of these posts. Not all of them. I don't want to say that. But some of these posts I saw white people and I thought, oh my God, like you're still missing the point. You're still missing the point. Oh
yeah. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, girl. And it's like, what do you do? I'm so over it. I have to, cause we could talk forever.
I know.
And we're over an hour.
I know. I'm good to go as long as you want to, whatever you need. I'm good. I did.
No. What did you want to respond? If you want to go through some of Noelle's comments.
No, there was a comment about somebody put a book that. White Fragility. I just ordered it on Amazon. I think it's on back order, unfortunately, but yeah, I just ordered it. So hoping it gets here soon. Yeah, it's exhausting to try to explain. They think we don't care about our own lives because of the violence and it says we don't care about our own lives because of the violence in the Black community is absolute BS. You can't say that. White people are white people.
Girl.
You can't sit here and say, well, where's Black Lives Matter when a Black person kills another Black person? That's not what it's about. That's not what it's about.
Right.
And also furthering this movement of Black Lives Matter, do they not think that's obviously going to help with the Black community and the violence? It's not about that. It's about police brutality. It's about reforming this system that has systemic racism in it. Just because you're protesting that doesn't mean that a Black person doesn't care about another Black person and the violence in the community. That's stupid. That is just, it's so dumb. It's so dumb.
You know what? I am curious about if you talk to your father about the whole the defund the police type thing, because I think it's important from what I understand, and we're not, experts. We're just talking here.
Right.
But I think it's important to note that defund the police doesn't mean destroy the police, get rid of the police or anything. It's nothing like that. We're talking about revamping the system. That's what we're talking about, right? I'm curious to know if you talked to your dad about that and what his thoughts have been on that part of the movement.
So
him being an LAPD officer, let me say that just in case anyone's joining in. Kim's dad is a retired part LAPD officer, detective, everything. So
jump departments. But the biggest thing that he said about defunding was that you have to get the right people in first to be able to allocate all of these funds. So when you're cutting those kinds of funds and you're cutting the budgets to reallocate, and they're talking about wanting to put it towards mental health and education, that's great. It's amazing. But if you still have the corrupt people at the top, when that happens,
that's good.
They're still going to be looking out for themselves. So now you've slashed the budget for somebody who's corrupt. And I have a friend who her husband's an LAPD officer. And before this happened, she was telling me that the budget was so mismanaged that she was sewing up his bulletproof vest, sewing it up for him, because they kept
Girl,
saying,
shut up.
Yeah.
Girl, shut.
They didn't have it in the budget to get him a new bulletproof vest. She was sewing it for him because the budget being mismanaged, being completely allocated so poorly. Excuse me. So what he was saying is that the actual defunding the police is not the bad thing. It's making sure you get those corrupt people out and good people, the right people in to allocate it. And like she's saying, leadership is everything. Because if you get the wrong people in that allocate a slash budget, it could possibly have an adverse effect, and it could get worse. You know, it could get worse. Yeah.
Damn. That's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Her husband has told me, he's like, LAPD eats their own. They eat their own. And they do. They do. They can see the corruption. They can see, and it's disgusting the way that and again, like Noelle is saying, leadership. It's the leadership in this country from the top down. From the top down. You know, it's the same thing in the government. You have to get corrupt people out of the government. You have to get corrupt people out of businesses. You can't have a corrupt CEO, whatever you want to look into. It's about really getting those people, those really nasty people out of departments. And I know that they're there because my dad told me that one of the most racist cops he ever worked for became his chief at one point. Mm-hmm. Now, these people are all retired. Like, he hasn't worked with the current administration and all. I'm talking about retired people.
But I mean, how many others like him?
Absolutely. But his point is, hey, I knew this racist cop. I knew this racist POS, and he made it to chief. So how can you sit there and say that there aren't problems? How can you say that they're not racist? And it's not about being anti-cop, because that makes everything safer for everybody. It makes fighting this fight makes it safer for the police out there to get these people out there. It makes it safer for everybody. So it's not even about that. It's the reform that is needed desperately. You have to get internal. One of the biggest things, you have to get internal investigations out of the police departments. You're having police basically police themselves. Absolutely not. You need to get internal affairs completely removed, so that when a police officer is investigated for police brutality, excessive force, whatever it may be, they're being investigated from an impartial force, not by their friends. Not by their friends. Of course you're going to have your friends back. Of course you're going to cover for your friend. No, move internal affairs. You can't have the police policing the police. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the other thing, one of his biggest was that the training is, I mean, it takes longer to become a hairdresser than a police officer. Why, if you have to study the law for X amount of years, that disparity is ridiculous. Training and background checks on these people, and to start to weed out. Right now, it's kind of like, hey, we're so short staffed, we might as well just get people out again. Like, we'll take anybody. And then all of a sudden, anybody has a gun. They're meant to uphold the law, holding a gun. My God, it's just so messed up within that system. It's so bad.
Yeah. Because how long does it take to, because what is the police training right now in LA? The last time you heard, was it like 3 months or something like that, or 6 months? I
think it's a 6 months period. And then I know you go through, it's something in, I believe, like a month and a half of some specific training, and then I believe 6 in another. It's not a lot. That's so crazy.
And it's so right when you say to get a certificate to do hair takes longer than 6 months. One of my cousin, who is a very proud licensed cosmetologist, shout out to Chanel, she talks considerably about the ridiculous amount of training it takes to become a cosmetologist, to do hair and nails and make you look good. My God, what it should take to be able to protect and to serve. Come on. Oh, that's a good psychological review. That's huge. Mm-hmm. That's huge. I don't know if you saw that comment, but
absolutely right. Absolutely, the psychological review of these people, because what's scary sometimes about the defunding is, so what they'll end up doing, again, if you have the wrong people in, will slash the budget in regards to incoming officers. So now you've lowered the yearly salary for brand new officers. So, I mean, really, do you want to be a police officer right now in this environment? Honestly, no. So you're going to get people who unfortunately are at the bottom of the barrel, or you get a lot of people who need mental psychology reviews. You get sometimes veterans who come out who need help. But this is the only they can get now. And so you're getting people who can take what they can get instead of people who want to be police or want to do better. You're going to get the bottom of the barrel with these people.
Yeah.
And it's
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's corruption,
deal.
Getting the corrupt people out of these institutions. You have to vote. And I know sometimes you feel like you can't do anything, but being aware of who you're voting in, being aware of when the elections come up, and can we get these people local
elections, people
are huge. Local elections. How much a local election has the effect on your local police department. Absolutely.
Right. It's such a huge, because I remember, Kamala Harris is such a big name right now in government today. Mm-hmm. But I remember, which is so crazy because I've only been in LA for about 13 years now. But I remember when Kamala Harris was running for, it wasn't DA, it was Attorney General here in California. So I remember when she was a technically local politician. And I could tell, how you can see some people and tell, I think it might be that actor thing in us when you can spot that it factor, mm-hmm. where I saw that it was just a stepping stone for her, where she was trying to get somewhere else. But I understood, it's a big deal for me learning about local politics, city council. I live in a part of LA, Glendale, where it is predominantly Armenian. So most of the people that's representing in that building are Armenian. However, Black folk are moving in here too. So I'm gonna need you to think about me. You know what I mean? I'm the only Black person that lives in my apartment building right now. I'm the only Black person on my street. And I see other Black people around when I walk to the grocery store, and I'm like, and they live kind of sparsely around Glendale. And I'm like, we need to be represented too. And so it's so important to vote those local elections. There are police positions that are voted on, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah. And also a lot of the times when people if there is enough pushback, you can get the chief removed. So yeah, that's huge. It's definitely hard to fire specific cops a lot of the time, which comes back to the quantified immunity. That's why we have to get rid of it, because it protects those people. But a lot of times you can overthrow the chief if enough people are getting to the point where he needs to go. Yeah.
So just, so important to vote locally. We got an election coming up for president, but I'm sorry, especially myself being born and raised in South Carolina, and growing up with not a state senator, but a United States senator who was a straight racist and served for South Carolina for decades. Strom Thurmond did. It's so funny because I specifically remember when he was in, it was coming to the end of his life, but he was still in DC, right? And he got in the hospital. He got real sick, but he recovered. And I remember my grandmother, I call her grandmother the sequel because she was my grandmother's best friend. But I remember her watching the news and the thing coming on saying Strom Thurmond is recovering well. And I remember her saying, evil never dies. And I was like, darn. Because she grew up. This was her background. This is how deep this stuff runs. But this is a man who was voted in.
Yeah.
So we gotta get out and vote in those local elections. It's so super important. Yes, president is important. Maybe, United States senator is important. But the things that are affecting your lives the most is the things that's going on in City Hall down the street. So I'm going to end it right there because we're about to hit an hour and a half and I want people to listen to the whole thing. I'm definitely going to pull snippets out. Kim, official invitation to do another one.
I would love to. And I have to say, no, is it Noelle that just her comments? Noelle, your comments are awesome.
Yeah, that's Noelle. Shout out to you, girlfriend. I think she has also inspired what I definitely want to talk about next because I definitely want to. Local elections matter is a T-shirt that we should do it, girl. Me and you should do a T-shirt that says local elections matter. But I definitely want to do one on something that I wanted to cover in this one, and that's definitely the entertainment industry, which is what we are pursuing. We have to talk about that. That's so important. And then I also want us to talk about interracial relationships, just because I've talked about interracial friendships with the two. I definitely want to talk about interracial relationships because that's a big thing. What it looks like specifically because both of us are in our early 20s, but our generation see it differently. So I definitely want to talk about that and some other things, but definitely those are the two things I wanted us to cover. In the meantime, thank you so much, girl. We're going to do this again really, really soon.
I'm down. This has been great. It's such a good learning experience for me. I love it. I'm really, really, really excited that you asked me to do it. It's so good. And thanks. Put Kim back on for several shows. Oh, thanks, Noelle.
So good.
I will thank my dad. I will. Yeah. He'll love to hear it.
Your mom too. I mean, it's just like what I was telling Jameson. It's what your parents, we have the responsibility to kind of impart into the generation behind us so that it changes, and neither one of us have kids, but we got nieces and nephews and cousins and all of that stuff. I'm like really wanting to make sure. Thanks for his service. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh no. Thank you.
I have bomb friends.
I don't doubt it. You're awesome. Oh my God. I've had so much fun with you through our friendship. Oh my gosh.
I know. And it's about to get crazy when we hit the Golden Globes and the Oscar red carpet.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Oh, the dream.
The joke is I'm definitely inviting you to the Black Woman in Hollywood event. You're going to be my special guest.
Yes. I can't wait. Can't wait.
So fun. I'm telling you, she's invited to the cookout. So
I'm more excited about the cookout. I'm not going to lie.
Because you want to eat. That's why.
I do.
So go back and watch it, you guys. Kim, if I were you, I would. Noelle is the one that's been commenting the most here. But over the next few days or the next couple of weeks, come back and check out the comments as they come back in. Because when people watch during that time, that's when you're going to see more comments. Love you too, Noelle. Stay safe.
Stay safe as well. Thank you so much.
But yeah, come back later and watch those comments. In the meantime, we will look at doing this again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, girl, I'm going to remove you now. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye. All right, you guys, that was my friend Kim. If you hung in there for the entire hour and a half, God bless you. You guys, it has been a wonderful conversation. I will bring Kim back for sure. In the meantime, watch through the entire thing if you came in late. I am so grateful for all the support. Like, follow, subscribe to Liberated Conversations. If you have not checked out the website, you can always go and check the website out at RuthinaPorterfield.com. The episode will be there. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere. Thank you so much for watching. Join the conversation by leaving comments. I will answer as many questions as I can. God bless. Peace. Stay cool. God bless.